Wonderful.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thanks for having me as well. So it's a team effort, I guess. How have you been?
Yeah.
What have you been up to with Refugee Support Europe recently?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. It's been busy as always. And obviously, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about your experiences. You were recently out in our Cyprus centre.
Hmm.
Maybe just a bit of context for people who are joining us. So
Sure.
at Refugee Support, we're a small charity, but we have a big impact. And our mission is to provide dignified support in times of urgent need. And there's different ways that we do that, and we're always encouraging people to get involved. So if anyone wants to know more about us, please do check us out in all the usual places. But one of the main ways that we do that is we have what we call a dignity centre where people can come and it's really a community space where we try and live out our values of dignity, solidarity and community. And we provide vital material items through what we call the Dignity Market, which is a shop. It's a free shop where people can choose what they want and really have that sense of agency, and they can really reclaim control over their lives. But more than that, is a community space where people can make connections and really experience the kind of welcome that we really all want to see in Europe. And I think, probably as a lot of people would agree, is needed, unfortunately, now more than ever.
Indeed, that was a very good explanation. I couldn't have said it better. Indeed, and actually, so I've been, I was a trustee for refugee support in the early days, back in like before COVID, actually, or during COVID. Before COVID, I got involved, and then things changed. And the Dignity Center, we used to hear about it in the trustee meetings, the work that we were doing in Cyprus as well as in Moldova, and some emergency work we were doing in Mexico and other places in Lebanon and in other places where there was emergencies for displaced people. And actually, I visited Moldova. Was it a year ago, or the year before? And
I
that
think it
was
was
a
2 years ago. Yeah.
yeah, really good experience because this the people have perceptions and sometimes stereotypes about refugees, but the situation there was like these Ukrainian refugees will come up in their nice cars with their phones and to the dignity center. That kind of course, I was aware of it somewhat, but people have certain ideas of what a refugee is, like someone who basically have nothing or just victims of wars and so on. But yeah, most of these people or all of these people had agency or should have agency. But that was, I think, my experience of Cyprus was somewhat different to Moldova. The
Yeah.
Moldova
Let's talk about
experience.
that.
Sure, sure. So Moldova was like mainly families, mainly women and children, and they were close. And basically, Moldova is the neighboring country to Ukraine, so that they were there for a short period of time, or they were new arrivals, or some of them were staying there for longer, and they were aware. They had like access to internet, phones, and as I said, transportation and so on. Very few people didn't had these basic necessity of life, I guess. So the importance of having cars and stuff. And but in Cyprus, it was people from all over the world. Actually, they were Afghans, they were Sudanese, Eritreans, Somalians. Literally, I was there for 5 days, about a week. I counted, I think, like 20 something nationalities. And it was mainly men. Of course, there was women and families as well, but it was mainly men, young men
Yeah.
who made these journeys. It was quite touching as a humanitarian, as somebody who made that journey myself. It was really nice to see and just help out in the shop and see these people come, not just for the food, but just to come for some coffee and tea, for just a catch up, just to catch up with friends and so on. There were actually people who were not entitled to any support any longer, like the 9 months or 9 weeks we have, or whatever timeline we have. But they were still
Yeah.
coming to just say hello and just to catch up with their friends or relatives. And some people just came to help with their labor cards, their medical cards, or their applications. So it was a mixture of, the food was an important aspect, but there were a lot more going on. So on one hand, I really enjoyed it. On the other hand, I was like, well, I wish there wasn't a need for such a place to exist. I wish we lived in a world where
Yeah.
people had access to those things without having a specific refugee or dignity center. People should be treated with dignity. Doesn't matter their nationality or their legal status or their background. But yeah, and it was quite an experience.
Yeah. No, I mean, and there's so many different things to touch on there, right? And the first, I think, really is like that use of space and really the concept of dignity. And I don't know whether you can talk a bit more about that, Gulwali, because I think it's something that's really powerful. And I think it's something that we really take for granted these kind of the importance of having just a daily routine. And exactly as you said, we have the shop, we have the market, but it's more than that. It's providing just a space where people can go. Someone knows your name. You're greeted with a smile rather than being a number on a checklist and coming through, having an appointment. Sometimes for some people, that really is all they have in the day, all they have in the week, in terms of just having that sense of community and that sense of belonging, that sense of welcome. And I don't know if you could talk a bit about that and how you found that in Cyprus.
Sure, indeed. I think these people, particularly those guys who are from all over the world, and they were trying to stick with the community of people from their own countries, but they had a difficult, challenging situation. Some of them were traveling from far away cities and towns. The food they were getting like £9, £10, or €10, and suddenly their bus ticket was €10. But then they group up together, a few of them, to send one person, because the food they were getting in the camps were like, basically most of them were saying you can't really eat this food, or sometimes you don't really get
Yeah,
much anyway. And so that sense of community and being treated with agency and with respect and with dignity. And I saw, we had volunteers, we had wonderful young people. There was Jordan and the lady, girl Alicia from South Africa. There was somebody from two girls from the UK. There was somebody from Mexico. Like, there were people who, it was really inspiring that there are people in the world, which I knew, but just experiencing it practically was that they care about people. They care about the suffering or the inhumanity and the injustices. They want to do something. So it's great. I
yeah,
encourage people who wants to help out to do and come and volunteer for us in Cyprus, to actually see it for themselves, or to, of course, if they can't travel, at least donate to our work. So I think, whatever we are doing, the essence of it is it's done in a dignified way. It's done with dignity in mind. And sometimes what happens is that you're given a handout, you're given a support sometimes, even
yeah,
with good intentions from charities and organization, but it's not purposely done. What we do is we do it purposely. We do it the way we do it, because it's not just about the items or packages of the food or the essentials, but it's about how it's given to people and how are people able to receive them. I think, yeah, it was quite empowering. I mean, I've done a lot of this kind of work in many years, being a former refugee and being campaigner and activist and an advocate for refugees' rights. Actually, I think if these refugee charities could learn quite a thing or two if they actually came and saw what we were doing previously in Moldova and now in Cyprus. The Cyprus Center has been open for a long time. And also, like, the hair cutter, the guy used to come a barber once or twice a week. It was really great to see the service providers. Sometimes, again, we take these small things for granted, just going and having a haircut. It's expensive if you don't have the money.
yeah,
And in that sense of, again, that sense of community, that sense of brotherhood, you come and see your friends, you get a haircut in the own style, because people have cultural preferences, and a lot of these African brothers, their hairstyle is very different to our hairstyle and so on. So I think the whole experience was, as I said, it was touching. It was something special. I was moved by it, even though I was aware of it. But just being there and spending the days there, and helping out people, translating for some Afghans, and there were a lot of Afghans who were coming from Turkey, and I was telling them, do you regret coming here? They said, well, no, because in Turkey we spent 20 years, 10 years. We had, everything is going within a day or two. We were told to leave. And at least in
yeah,
Cyprus, although there's challenges, although there is discrimination, sometimes racism, the refugee status takes a long time. There's a lot of bureaucracy, but they have a hope. They have an aspiration of safety. They think things will work out, and they are individuals here, and they have potential to succeed. And most of these guys were working. And I
yeah,
was there in the end of April. They were working in some of, like, the bin collectors, working in construction. It was very, very hard. But most of these guys didn't want to be sitting doing nothing. And again, the system was good actually. If you didn't get your status within like 9 months or something, you were able to work. Although this job was very limited in jobs which are not very fit for a lot of people. But again, people had hopes, and that
yeah,
gave me hope, in turn, that everyone I met, they were very positive about, although they had so many challenges and difficulties, and so much was going on in their lives, but they were still hopeful for the future. They were hopeful for their children's
yeah,
future. And so, like, sometimes we underestimate these guys' determination. They went to a great length and took great risk to ensure that their children have a better and safer future. And again, as I was there, and I thought, I could easily be one of those guys. I know
yeah,
my fate or my experience has been different, but and I was able to go around and get out of the place because I had a piece of paper, a document, which they didn't. And it's just these things also makes me think and makes me realize how we take citizenships and passports and nationality and borders, all these things for granted. When in reality, you could be it could be anyone stuck in that situation if you were born in a different place with the wrong nationality or wrong citizenship or lack of it. So yeah, it made me think about a lot of things and how the inequality in the world, and of course what was happening in Gaza. Like
Yeah.
Cyprus is very close to what's happening in Palestine, and also the British bases there being used. So I travel around with my family, and it was just a strange feeling. On one hand, we were able to, it was good to see the work up that we do with refugees and displaced people, and the sense of community and the belonging and treating people with dignity. But then just seeing all across the water, the closest to to Syria as well as Lebanon, and there was a lot happening actually at the time. There was war in
Yeah.
Lebanon, so that all these things were making me think about how again we take our safety and security for granted, and how I know the world is such a terrible or miserable place because of powers, greed, corruptions, and so on. So there's a lot going on in my mind. It still is, sadly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, exactly. And I mean, exactly as you said right at the top, I mean, we would love to not exist, right? We would love to not need to exist. That's the ultimate vision. That's the ultimate goal. But unfortunately, we're in the situation that we're in, and it's, at the moment, seemingly getting worse and not getting any better. And but it's so important also, exactly as you have highlighted, to recognize the day-to-day stories of hope and the day-to-day stories of the people that are coming through. And we really do see that difference. I mean, in the Dignity Centre, we have the Dignity Centre in Cyprus, obviously, that we're focusing on today. We also have another one in the UK, in Bournemouth. But really, I mean, exactly as you said, Gulwali, it's the same story in Moldova. It was the same when we were in Greece, also working in the refugee camps there. I mean, we really see that transition of the people when they first arrive, and they arrive with us. And it's actually really, I mean, in Cyprus, for example, we're known as the Dignity. People come out of the camp, of the main refugee camp, the main reception camp, and the first thing they hear is word of mouth. It's all passed on that you go to the Dignity. You have to go to the Dignity. We're really the first port of call, and people come out and they're incredibly lost. And then on top of that, exactly as you said, they have all the bureaucratic challenges, all of this. They're trying to navigate this totally new environment, with no support, with no family, with no financial support, with no kind of resources at all. And they come to us and they really are lost. And what we really try to do is just provide that breathing space. They can shop with us for 8 weeks, and they can really just take that breath. They can work out the next step, so that they can really, exactly as you said about talking with some of the guys, they can really then start to build their own future. So we want to try and facilitate that. And we really see the changes, exactly as you said, they come to us, they really need the food. And then, they stop, maybe they start getting a job. In Cyprus, for example, it's after 9 months that people can then start looking for work. And you really just see that difference. And it's a real kind of lightness. It's a real kind of lifting of a weight, something that they've been carrying. So that really is, where we see ourselves kind of fitting into that space. It's really trying to bridge that gap, where there really is just a lack of support.
Exactly that. I mean, in the West, people might think, oh, in the UK, we might think, oh, the refugee crisis is only the English Channel and the people in northern France. But actually, the crisis continues. Maybe it's not hitting us so much. But in Cyprus, I saw that people are arriving almost on a daily basis, particularly
Yeah.
from northern Cyprus and elsewhere. In a way, we do small things, but these small things have sometimes values that we can't even estimate, or we can't even measure, because these things goes a long way. And also, I heard stories from people who were just there in limbo, but they had, just having the Dignity Center, being able to come and talk to someone and get, like, the people used to come for applying for their travel document, or just help with
Yeah.
any bank accounts and getting a letter. And the team we have there, Paula and all the volunteers, were doing amazing work. Like, it requires a lot of dedication and commitment to stay to be kind and compassionate all the time, because I was there for 5 days and it was hard. There were some people who would
Yeah.
come and challenge you. They're like, "Oh, my friend got it. Why can't I get it?" People are bringing other people's cards saying, "No, I want to. This person is my friend. I want to take their food." Of course, I mean, people, all sorts of things were happening, and you just have to stay sane and you have to stay calm. It was not easy dealing with certain situations and challenges, but I think it's
Yeah.
great that we exist, and I hope people could come and support us and work with us in terms of fundraising, in terms of going there, seeing it for themselves, in terms of donation and so on. So I think definitely, as I said, other charities could learn from the model, because I've seen a lot of charities even in the UK, and you're well aware, Rachel, that they do good work, but it's just like the intention has to be right, and the purpose needs to be the right one when it comes to treating people with agency and dignity. Everyone is an individual. Everyone have stories. You can't brush everyone with the same brush, and respecting people and just basically giving them that sense. In Cyprus, I saw there was a lot of signposting going on. If you weren't
Yeah,
able to support people, we signposted them to other places where they could get help with, like, even though there were very limited support around, but help with like clothing, help with like the English language or other Cyprus language, the Greek language, or so on. And so there was a lot of signposting and support for these guys. But yeah, people are lost. I mean, I went to the mosques,
yeah,
and I saw these people, and yeah, it was such a genuinely, really, heartwarming experience. And I hope to go back at some point and maybe do some
yeah.
volunteering there, because not only you make a difference and have an impact, but actually it has more of an impact on you, and it just puts your life in perspectives.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome back anytime, Gulwali. We'll always find something for you to do. There's always something to something to do in the dignity centres, as you know by now.
Sure.
But I think it's a really, it's a really good point that you make there as well about volunteering, and that's certainly something. I mean, that really is the story also of refugee support, right? Is we talk about how we're volunteer powered. We've got our amazing volunteer ambassadors like you. We have the volunteer trustees, and we have the volunteers that are helping out every day in the centres. We've got volunteers supporting with the back office, supporting with IT, we really are, powered by these volunteers. And again, it's a story that we hear so often, that people take so much out of it as well. That they really go and they learn so much. They have these wonderful stories. It really is where the magic happens, right? In these centres, as you say, there's up to 20, 25 different nationalities, different languages being spoken. It really is this kind of meeting place, mixing place, where you're learning so much about not just the world that you live in, but also about yourself and about those around you. And then they go back and they talk with their networks and they talk with their communities and they share stories about what they've seen. And that really is the story of how we are built and how we've continued to grow and how we sustain it. And it's I think also for us, that gives us a lot of hope, because we're seeing that all the time. We're seeing people come in with that energy. Many volunteers come back, some come back every year, years on end, in order to support, in order to have that impact, from day one, they arrive and they're really having that impact. And so it's so incredibly heartening to us. And, obviously for our members, for the people who are coming to the Dignity Centre, that's also really nice for them as well, because they can also see familiar faces and they can get to know us. And again, it sort of builds that feeling of trust and a safe and a welcome space.
Of course, actually, some people are still writing to me on Instagram and Facebook that they met me there. It's like, and also I saw some volunteers who actually were returning
Yeah,
year after year. And again, it's just that dedication and commitment. It's inspiring. And I encourage people who are listening and watching, please consider actually coming and volunteering for refugee sports in Cyprus or in the UK. Or
yeah,
if you're not able to go again, you can donate, you can make a difference in other ways. And I think, definitely one thing, also, there was a lot of things I saw in these 5 days that I observed. You see Afghans friends with Sudanese, you see Eritreans, you see Somalians, you see people from Iran, you see all sorts of different nationality. Like that would not normally happen in normal circumstances. Like it was nice to see the friendship being built, not just amongst people with the same language or same religion and same culture, but just different ethnicity, different backgrounds. But still, people realized they were in the same boat in a sense. They had the same struggles, but at the same time, they needed each other to not be isolated, to not,
yeah.
I just, again, these people coming from different towns and cities to collect food and to collect support. And some of them were from different nationality. There was a list of people who, 3, 4 people living in a house, or they were living in a camp, just to team up to say, look, you go and get the food, I'll go next week. And so it was just a lot of team effort.
Yeah.
And even though the language may be differences, the culture will be different, but their struggles and their situations and circumstances were pretty much the same. So they were, pulling together as a community,
That's
which was
right.
nice to see.
Yeah. Well, it's human as well, right? It's all these kind of small human issues, human problems, all those sorts of things. And I think, especially in Cyprus, where we have food in the market as well, and food is such a amazing thing to meet over and to bring people together. And, you know, the amount of conversations that we've had, and you learn so much, you know, because people come from different places, and they have different types of rice, for example. I mean, I've never known so much about rice from all over the world that I have from doing this kind of work, you know, and people will start telling you their recipes that they know. And, you know, then someone will say, well, that's not how we cook it in our, you know, and you can have these really amazing, very, very human, very basic interactions that, you know, exactly as we said, we take them for granted, these kind of sense of normality and routine every day in the lives that we're living out. And exactly as you said, it's just it's potluck in terms of where we're from, that we are able to do that, and some people do not have that luck because they were born in other countries.
Sure. And one thing was really fun was that the biscuits and tea and coffee was literally, you know, nonstop.
Yeah,
Everyone could come and have tea and biscuits and coffee. That was really nice. And yeah, you know, it was just the biscuits were running out very quickly, and the tea and coffee thermos of, you know, being poured over and filled in. So it was just a nice experience in that sense. But again, I was aware, especially speaking to Afghans or speaking to some Pakistanis and Iranians who I could speak to in Pashto, in Dari, in Farsi, in Urdu, and so on. Like the people were anxious, people were stressed out, people were worried about their future in a sense that they were in limbo for years and what's going to happen and so on and so forth. People wanted to
yeah,
travel onwards, and so you know things were not like all rosy and happy at the sense, but they were, at least they were happy to that this space and place exists, because you know having that space, having the place, and having the friendly faces and people who could actually, you know, answer a few questions and support you and direct you in the right direction and help you with things was a big deal for them. So most of the guys were they were full of gratitudes, I said to them, look, we're doing this because we care and we are concerned. You know, it's like, you know, it's not a, for us, like in our own lives, this is not a huge thing for us to be here and to help
yeah,
out. But for them, they were very appreciative of the volunteers, and
yeah.
they realize, you know, these people coming all over from all over and giving their time, spending their money and their resources to actually do this.
Yeah, I think that's right as well, because it's, you know, I mean, we were founded really because of systemic failure, you know, governmental failure and systemic failure to provide vital services and to allow people to access their basic human rights. And I think it can be quite easy, you know, and you know, this happens to me a lot as well, to feel very overwhelmed about all of the different things that are going on in the world, and all of the injustices, and all of the fights, and all of the causes. And, you know, so it's really, we know that we were never going to be able to meet the need, and we're never going to be able to fix that problem. We're never going to be able to fix that systemic problem. We're really fighting to change it in so many different ways, which I would encourage everyone to check out as well, in terms of how you can get involved, how you can write to your MP, how you can support in terms of really driving through that systemic change, especially here in the UK. But, you know, on the day to day, what we're trying to do is really just plaster over the cracks. And so people come to us with all sorts of, exactly as you said, Gulwali, all sorts of different needs and really, really complicated situations. And that's before you even start talking about the traumas that might have happened on the journey, and everything else that might be going on. So it really is incredibly difficult. The challenges are, you know, vast and varied, and unfortunately only increasing. But just having that, just doing small things, and really, yeah, just those small actions, and especially from the volunteers, many of whom, you know, they've also been encouraged to get involved because they also feel really impotent, and really like they can't make an impact and they can't do anything to support. And actually, you know, through refugee support, through coming out and volunteering with us, through donating, as you said, Gulwali, you really are having an impact really from day one.
Yes, I mean, so to be honest, in the last 2 years, it's been quite frustrating and difficult for me to continue being an activist and campaigner because of seeing the genocide, the war,
Yeah,
the situation in Gaza, and you know everywhere else. Like, I mean, the civil war in Sudan. Like, seeing these images, especially from Gaza, coming out of children in the starvation, it's like, what
yeah,
is the point? But then you
yeah,
realize you do what you can. You write to your MP. Actually, I got a response from my MP after like 3 months. I wrote to her so many times on Gaza and Palestine and the issues there, and how it needs to, you know, this needs to stop. People needs not to be killed. The whole of Gaza is destroyed. There's so much destruction and devastation that needs to end. You know, some supposedly in the UK there are people who are against refugees, but then we are supporting a government in Israel which basically are bombarding and literally destroying the whole 2 million people space where the 2 million people lives. So yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it's been hard, it's been difficult, but then again, you put things into perspective and you do what you can. You help in your own
Yeah.
little ways. Like in the UK, we have recently the government decided to actually ban people from citizenship who comes here irregularly, who comes here through small boats or through irregular means. Although there is no alternative, there is no safer routes or regular routes for people to come. So
Yeah.
there's so many people being stressed out, and of course, being in limbo. They've been here for 10 years, 20 years. No matter how long they've been here, they will never be able to qualify because they will be a person of bad character for coming. Before the bad character reference, the character reference was around paying your taxes, not having like speeding tickets, not having points on your license, and being a good citizen and so on. But now it added that people who comes here regularly, that's also a sign of bad character, and it's
Yeah.
crazy. And also we have the borders in asylum bill going through Parliament, which is similar to the previous government. Yes, Rwanda is not happening, and also we set up in Southampton. Where do we have a dignity center
In
because of the
Bournemouth.
Bournemouth, because of the
Yeah.
the baby Stockholm situation.
Yeah.
So much wastage of money, so much wastage of resources. This whole idea of deterrence, detention. Now we want to send people to back to France who comes here in exchange for someone else. This whole idea of trading human beings for the deserving and undeserving. It's crazy. The whole philosophy and policies and laws we have in the UK. It's crazy when it comes to asylum and refugees. So of course the situation in Cyprus, in Greece, and elsewhere. But here at home, people need to get involved and be active participant in challenging what's happening and how our freedom, like the freedom to protest has been, this organization who are protesting for the rights of Palestinians and people in Gaza have been labeled as terrorist organizations. So there's so much
Yeah.
happening, and you gotta be aware and trying to do what you can by writing to your MP, by going on demonstration, because these things again we take it for granted that we live in a supposedly a free country, but
Yeah.
our freedom is kind of under threat, and we see now just as we speak there are protests in Epping in London against
Yeah.
asylum accommodation. So some guy has committed some crime, crazy, but like punish them, bring them to justice accordingly. Why are you brushing everyone with the same brush? Not all refugees and asylum seekers are criminal. Humans are humans. If people commit crimes or mistakes, then you deal with them individually. They're individuals. You can't be saying everyone is a criminal, and that's the narratives by the media and politicians that have been kind of forced on the public for so many years. And so now
Yeah.
it's like there are people who looks like me, they are afraid to walk around because I saw videos of actually some brown and black people being targeted for just being black and brown. They might not
Yeah.
even be asylum seekers or refugees. So this is where we are, and again, it's important that we challenge this, racism and fascism and these laws and policies, which we might think doesn't affect us, but it would affect us at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's exactly right. And I think we're always saying it as well at Refugee Support, right? It's really important to be part of that change that you want to see. I mean, in the end, it can be totally paralyzing, and we, absolutely understand that. The kind of the dual combination of hopelessness and helplessness of really, I can't do anything, even though what we're seeing every day, doesn't reflect our values and is not who we are. And we want to stand up and say, this is not in our name. And it can be really paralyzing. As you said, there are so many different causes and there are so many different things that you want to speak out, against and that you want to challenge. And so, but small, sometimes really small gestures and getting involved in certain ways, as you said, being aware of your own power and being aware of doing what you can in whatever way that might feel small to you, actually can have a really big impact. And it will also often be quite empowering for the person who's doing the action as well, because they're really taking charge and they're really expressing and really saying, this is not who we are and this is not the country that we want to live in.
Indeed, correct. I mean, sometimes we, as human beings, as citizens, we have a responsibility, and we need to be, like for example, when I think about when I was quite ignorant about the Holocaust, when I go to the UK, I've learned about it. And I was like, what was the world doing? What was people in Germany doing? The innocent Jews and people were murdered for their faith or who they were, and the gypsies and others. Like, and now I see what's happening in the world and how the Palestinians are being killed and murdered in the West Bank as in Gaza indiscriminately and starved to death. And what are we doing? What is the world doing? Of course, there are a lot of us who are protesting and demonstrating and are writing and doing whatever we can, but there are others who are just like, oh, it's too big of a issue for me. What can I do? What can I change it? And I think we should not be complicit. We should always make a
Yeah.
stand and make a stand for justice and against injustice. I mean, it might be harsh, but future generation, like what I'm going to tell my kids and what, like how, what part did I play and what did I do to actually, to stop it or do whatever I could. Like these guys who are protesting, who are just being sadly labeled as a terrorist organization who went and stopped some, painted on some planes. They're more of an issue in the UK than those who are actually carrying out the genocide. It's
Yeah.
just beyond crazy. So yeah, I mean, refugees, people become refugees as a result of our, foreign policies, our actions or inactions in places like, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, and literally the recent Afghan story of how the UK government, there was a leak of 20,000
Yeah,
Afghan names. And it's just literally like now there are people who are debating saying we shouldn't be welcoming Afghans. Why did we that mistake? If it happened, we shouldn't be welcoming the people who, or we shouldn't be bringing the people over because it was our mistake. And it's like we put their lives at risk. And so not only Afghans were struggling before, but now even more so. So yeah, there's a lot, as you say, it's exhausting sometimes. There's so many
yeah,
issues and challenges, but we do what we can in our little ways by reading about refugee stories and by amplifying their voices and by befriending asylum seekers and refugees, mentoring them, going on volunteering, what like anyways, like becoming a trustee. There's so many ways we can help individually as well as collectively in making
yeah,
people's lives better, and or at least not making it miserable, and helping people in any way in small, as you said, in small ways, that goes a long way for these guys.
yeah, yeah, absolutely that. Yeah.
Excellent. Do you have anything else to add, or have we spoken for enough?
I really like this, Gulwali. I think we didn't intend it, but it seems that every summer we get together and have some kind of dialogue. I don't think we planned it, but last year we also got together and did a talk as well at a festival. So it's becoming an annual thing, which I really like.
That was very good, actually. Yeah, so Grenfell, I think it's happening again. It's happening every year. I've been
Yeah,
going every year, so I'm hoping somebody will invite me this year in August. It's not
yeah,
far from where I live, so it'll be nice to actually go and they have a separate place on migrations and climate change, I think. So there's like a tent or there's like a house or something there which debates or discuss these issues. I think, yeah, it's good to have a conversation and discussion and catch up. But thank you for the opportunity for me to go to Cyprus and actually see the work for,
always. Thank
speaking
you for
about things
going.
is, thank you. Speaking about things is different. It's good, but actually being there in person has a different impact on you. It really changes you in a good way and makes you
Yeah,
realize how much you can make a difference, how much you could have an impact, and especially considering all these big issues in the world and big challenges. Of course, I saw Palestinians there. There were Syrians. There were a lot of Afghans, and there was kind of a new surge in Afghans because a lot of Afghans left Turkey and then came over. And also, the one thing I haven't mentioned actually is the border. The border between North and South Cyprus. That was
yeah,
fascinating. I've read about it. I watched so many documentaries on it, but actually being there, crossing it a few times back and forth, and driving alongside it in the mountains, it's just like, again, it's crazy how these boundaries in physical infrastructure is being created because for what? And it just, yeah, I think if people are interested in borders, go see Cyprus. It's definitely worth a visit and do some volunteering for us. Yeah, it doesn't make sense that there should be a border in the middle of this small island. It's just like
yeah,
a completely waste of time and money and resources, and the unnecessary hatred and divisions. And again, that's the same case for all the other countries in the world. But like this place, a small space, two communities living side by side. There, I spoke to Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots when crossing back and forth. They're like, yeah, we had no issues. We were all fine until things become political, and there was media and politicians use this for their propaganda and advantages to create all these problems between us. And so
yeah.
yeah, that was
No,
also the
Cyprus
center
is
is very close
really,
to the border.
it's not publicized at all. I mean, this is also, I think, the incredible thing about the situation in Cyprus is that, obviously, I mean, really, the situation at the border generally, even in Greece now, is really out of the news. Hasn't really been in the news for the last couple of years. But I was really shocked, to learn about the situation in Cyprus because I assumed that it was the same as Greece. I'd obviously spent a long time in Greece. And it's a very, very different, exactly as you said, it's its own unique historical context. And it really is at the door of three different continents, geographically in terms of where it's situated. As you said, it's so close to the Middle East. I mean, you can see it.
Yeah,
And then it's European, it's divided in two. It has its colonial past, its British colonial past. So it has UK plug sockets and they drive on the left. I mean, it really is this mixture of, history. But as you said, Gulwali, it really does also shed light on somehow the the arbitrariness and the ridiculousness of the concept of borders really just in existence there in terms of the green line and the division between north and south. It's it's a really, really interesting country with a really, really rich history, as with everywhere, but somewhere that really just doesn't receive any media attention.
Sure, and I think the just it was illogical, irrational, and also it was nice to see there was peacekeepers, there was Russians, German, there were people from Jordan. It was nice to see that as well, but it was completely unnecessary. That place, that border should not exist. I mean, that
Yeah,
barriers and that literally the physical barrier and the sense of intimidation. And so yeah, it was definitely worth a visit just for the histories and the culture and the people who are enthusiastic about borders and want to see it. So you're right, and I think
yeah,
we need to focus back on the human stories. And I have visited Malta and I've seen the situation there as well a few times actually. And also, I was in Chios doing some volunteering for refugee banana and biryani. My sister Rohi, she does great, brilliant work. And yes, the things were pretty bad in Chios as well, especially in the camp and the struggles, the food. People used to walk like 3 hours to go to town, and the camp was in the middle of nowhere. They had flooding, they had diseases, they had all sorts of issues. They have and just the politics and the lack of support or the compassion were just not there. And again, there were similar issues in Cyprus as well. And I hope
yeah,
the international community, the EU, show support to these countries who are dealing with, or they're at the front of these crises, and
yeah,
support human beings in a dignified, like, this is my thing. Like, I'm not saying for any special treatment for refugees. All I'm saying, let's treat these people with compassion, with dignity, and with respect, and help them as much as we can, support them as much as we can, and where not possible, still treat them with dignity. Even, I mean, I
yeah,
disagree with detention, I disagree with deportation. Even that needs to be, if that needs to be done, let's do it in a humane way possible. Let's do it in a compassionate way, in a dignified way. There's no need for this fear and hostility and hatred. Like, things could be done and laws could be followed and policies could be made, and humanity and dignity at heart of it. But actually, no, that's not something I've seen in the UK or in Europe. It's not about, it's like, yeah, how do we get rid of these people? They're all
yeah,
criminals, they're all troublemakers, and they're coming, invading our countries, and literally they're coming, and it's like the way they speak about people like me is just really inhumane and unfortunate. And that words have consequences. It leads to riots. It leads to people life being at risk, and so so forth. But yeah, let's keep up this conversation
yeah.
and keep up the good work. And I hope people watching, listening
Likewise.
could come and volunteer with us, or donate, or help us in the UK or in Cyprus or elsewhere in the world. So yeah. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for joining me, and thanks for having me. And I look forward to catching up soon.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks again, Gulwali. We have to get you at Bournemouth next. That's
Yeah, definitely. Bournemouth is
the
not far.
yeah, exactly. Perfect. Thanks again for inviting me and for all the work you do.
Wonderful. Thank you guys for joining us, and I will share this
Thanks,
and so other people
everyone.
can see it.
Thanks, Gulwali. Thanks,
Thanks. Bye bye.
everyone. Nice to see you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.